Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining me for another edition of Behind the Business. I'm your host, Robere Kazadi. Today, my guest is Ryan Narus from the Archimedes Group, and he has an interesting perspective and take on the world of real estate and probably not something that a lot of people know about or that are into, but it's about mobile home parks. That's his focus and his expertise. So we're going to talk to Ryan. And Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you for having me. Where should we start?
Well, Ryan, you've gone from an award-winning car salesman to Wells Fargo leadership, all the way to mobile home parks. And that's quite a journey. So, what was the aha moment in your career that made you pivot into real estate?
It's funny because there's never really one event. It's always a slow churn, if you will, until you finally make the jump. And I would say there's a bunch of different factors that kind of came together. First and foremost, I had to learn that I was an entrepreneur at heart. And then I had to learn what type of business I wanted to start, which inevitably pointed me towards real estate. Specifically, I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
And if I could point to a couple books, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad for real estate, 4 Hour Work Week that I was meant to be an entrepreneur, and The Millionaire Next Door helped point me towards mobile home parks. So it was definitely not one aha moment. It was slowly building evidence that would eventually persuade me to take something like that seriously. And then it became a how question, not a what, but a how question.
Right. Okay. So, how long have you been in the industry now, real estate specifically?
I have been, I guess, if you want to consider my first house hack as my start in real estate, I'd say 2012. But I did not discover mobile home parks until July of 2015. So, as of this recording in May of 2026, we are going on my 11th year anniversary.
Okay, awesome. How many units do you have now?
So I want to preface this by saying when I started in July of 2015, I had nothing. I had no money. I had no network. I had no experience. And most importantly, I had no business trying to play ball in a rich person's game, which is commercial real estate, multifamily real estate. I had no business figuring it out. And there's a reason why I say that before I reveal my lot count. And it's because I want your audience to really get to know how not special I am. What made me special wasn't my intellect or my talent or my this or that. It was just the willingness to keep going and figure it out. So, with no money, no network, no experience, it forced me to call probably over 1,000 people to try and land on a handful of folks who believe, quite literally, a handful of folks who believed in me. And then I had to quit my job at Wells Fargo, move into a mobile home, sleep on a blow up mattress, take an over 50% haircut in my salary, lose all my benefits, 401k, insurance, et cetera, all to pay myself next to nothing and chase a dream. Very
Wow.
risky, crazy, if you will, weird hustle culture, whatever you want to call it. That was years ago. Flash forward a decade later, and I'm at 87 communities, 4,700 total lots. So just a little light of that's in the 600, 4,600. And I just really want to ram home the point that, look, being an entrepreneur is not about the benefits of being an entrepreneur. It's about finding problems that are really hard to solve and getting excited to go and solve them. That was the fun part for me back then and remains to be the fun part to this day.
Wow. That is amazing. So, what's your goal then? If you're at 4,700 lots, as you call them, some might call them units, I guess, but if that's the vernacular, then let's go with lots. Where are you going with this? Is 10,000 the big number, or is it 8,000? What's on your horizon?
I've had enough big numbers over the years to realize it's not about the number. It's not about the finish line, because when you cross that finish line, you better have your next race in mind. Otherwise, it's just depressing, if I'm being honest. It's unsatisfying. You celebrate before you cross the finish line, and then when it's over. And I understand, having had two kids, what postpartum depression from a psychological perspective feels like. Because imagine having this baby that's in your body, and everything you're doing is about the baby, and then just boom, in a moment it's gone, and it's outside of you. And yeah, you're starting the next race, but there's still, for my wife especially, and for many women, the mourning of not being pregnant anymore. That's not to say they're not overjoyed at the child that arrives, but that is a very big part of entrepreneurship and being successful. Is you fight for these milestones, and it's a common trap to become obsessed with the outcome and the benefits on the other side. And when you get to that other side and you see these benefits and you see how unfulfilling they are, that leads a lot of people to things like midlife crises, or again, postpartum depression, in part, right? Because a lot of that can be chemical and hormonal too. But it's just an example to illustrate a larger point, which is you have to fall in love with the journey. And I know that's cliched. Oh my gosh, you'll love the journey. You'll love what you do. You won't spend a day in your life working. But the reality is, like, as annoying as those cliches are, gosh darn it, are they true? So is it 5,000 lots? Is it 10,000 lots? Is it a million lots? Is it a billion? I'm done doing that. It's not about, like, I am embarrassed to even say it publicly, and I'll tell you why. If I didn't say it publicly, people would just be like, this is a dorky dude in Under Armour. Like, no one would take me seriously. You kind of have to pre-qualify yourself to get attention, to have people come in and go, oh wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I can learn a lot. I'm glad I'm listening into this guy. I'm going to learn something from this. So you kind of have to pre-qualify yourself. But to me, it doesn't matter, and I don't care, because what I really want in my life at this point in time, having experienced those benefits on the other side of the finish line, the race and training for the race and running the race is the fun part. And now I'm at the point where another race doesn't really incrementally do that much more for me. What's the difference between
Gotcha.
5,000 lots and 10,000 lots? And the answer is not really anything. More work, more stress, more this, more that. To me, the fun part now is kind of being Morpheus from the Matrix and showing the red pill and the blue pill. And for those who want to take the red pill and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, I love changing people's lives for the better. And I love being a small part in somebody's journey to happiness and financial freedom and everything. So to me, I'm so excited at non quantifiable goals. Those non quantifiable goals are quite simply helping people in many different.
Cool. So you've got communities, are they spread out all over the country, or do you like to focus on a certain area in the country? How are you doing that?
Big believer in inch wide, mile deep. Because the reality is, if you are not super well capitalized, if you are not Goliath, you have to be David. And the best way to be David is to know something so well that you can find its Achilles heel. And the only realistic way you can do that is you pick one or a handful of markets to start. Now, you can grow from there, but if you are going to compete conventionally, you better have a lot of capital. And if you're not filthy stinking rich, then you better have a lot of insight, cleverness, and wisdom. And again, the best way to do that is an inch wide, mile deep. So I'm in North Carolina. I bought my
Okay.
first community in North Carolina. I bought my second community in North Carolina. I bought my fourth community in South Carolina, just across the border. And I have grown to, I think we're at 40 properties in North Carolina and 4 in South Carolina. But I'm also in Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida. So I've expanded outwards. I've offered but not done anything in Alabama or Virginia or Maryland. But that's kind of where I got my start. Now, if I was excited to be the biggest in the world, to be the best that ever did it, I would have to go nationwide. But To me, if you get overextended, you start to lose that magic that made you special to begin with. Again, inch wide, mile deep. So I'm at this weird kind of fork in the road between I could go be institutional now. I've got the track record, got the resume, you got the network, etc. Do I want to do that and compete conventionally? Because now I finally feel like I can compete conventionally and dominate. Whereas in the past, I had to find my domination by picking, the path less traveled, if you will. But that just doesn't sound fun to me. It sounds way more fun to go out and set a bunch of people free and help people's lives. So I would say right now, I started in the Carolinas. I started to slowly expand out. I'm not overly interested in expanding outside of that kind of tiny little footprint. That being said, you never know. If I feel like I can really meaningfully and impact and have real impact on folks in other markets and other quadrants of the United States, I'll 100% consider it.
So you're basically on the East Coast then, from Florida up to North Carolina. And do you remember the cost, the price tag on your very first property? Do you remember
Oh, of
what that
course.
was?
It was $1,525,000.
So, how in the world, if you're a guy who started this with no money, no contacts, no network, and no experience, his first property is 1.5 mil? How'd you pull that off?
So what I did was I networked my tail off. So my business partner Ian and I, we found that deal. We had no money and no means of actually operating it, but finding that deal off market was valuable, and that commanded what's called an acquisition fee. So that was like 5% or $76,000 that obviously Ian and I split 50-50. And we kept a small portion of that is 25,000, so 12.5 each in that deal and cashed out the rest of the 50K. So 25 for me, 25 for Ian. And then our second deal, we each put in 12.5 or however much we put in that second deal. And then you fight to execute the business plan on the second deal, you refinance, take your money out and multiply it and do it again. And that first deal, this is a really controversial thing. I'm glad you brought it up because a lot of folks go, oh, limited partner? Why would I want to be a limited partner? I want to be a general partner. I want to participate in the upside. I did not have anything going
Right.
for me that would give me any reason to be in the general partnership at all. So I partnered with a group that already had 20 mobile home parks, 10, 15, 20 mobile home parks at the time. Well established folks knew who they were. They gave me that acquisition fee. They let me participate as an LP in that first deal so that for my second deal, which was only, what was it? I think it was $500,000 our second deal. And the down payment and capital reserves were about 150, maybe a little less. I only put in, I think, 25,000. The finder's fee, basically, Ian put in the other 25, and then our other investor, JV partner, put in whatever the remainder was. And that was, or maybe it was a little less from Ian and I, maybe it was 12.5 each. But that first acquisition fee got us general partnership in the second deal we did, and that's how we did it. We started off by being limited partners so we could say that we were mobile home park owners, and then we went and found a little troubled mobile home park and paved the roads and fixed the pipes and got the crackheads out and brought in some great families and cut down the trees and invested in the homes and refinanced it, took our money out tax free, and went and did it again. So it was slow. It took me 5 years from my Wells Fargo days to get back to the Wells Fargo salary. And then I never looked back. So it was a long term bet.
So, do you think that your experience and your time at Wells Fargo gave you the financial IQ to step into these larger projects right out of the chute. I get it that you got a couple of bucks from a finder's fee and that you parlayed that into your next deal and so on and so forth. But coming from a banking background with Wells Fargo, do you feel like that gave you a leg up because you understood the numbers better, or you understood the process better, or because you had contacts in the banking world that you could go back to and say, I've got a new project here. I'm trying to buy this place for 500 G's, and this is what I have. Did you leverage those relationships, or did you do it without that?
No, not at all. And that's not a knock at Wells Fargo. So the answer is a hard no.
Okay.
The answer is a hard no. Not a single one of those contacts or lessons learned helped me in any way, shape, or form. And that's not a knock at Wells Fargo. That's the probably the same thing could apply to my master's in business because I have an MBA. And that's just not to say Wake Forest University wasn't fantastic and I don't cherish my MBA experience to this day. When I was starting, put that on my resume every time. I called those contacts. I tried to leverage that when talking to bankers. Hey, I'm one of you. I worked for a bank. Hey, look, I got my MBA. Look, and it's a great university. Like, look what I'm doing. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. And the industry specific knowledge that I gained from the front lines as a property manager were way more than any financial metric I learned in a classroom. The street smarts you gather from working specifically in that industry counted for way more. Now, when somebody comes across my name and say, "Hey, Ryan, I got a deal I want to partner with on you, or I want you to be an LP in one of your deals, or I trust you, or this, that, the other thing." Nobody asked where I went to college. Nobody asked where I worked before. They look at the body of work I've put together. They ask me tough questions. They like and trust my answers. I can show them the machine I built, and they're
Right.
wowed by it. And that is carries way more weight. Now, again, I started at Wells Fargo thinking I'm going to network here with upper middle class folks who are going to invest in my funds and all this. I'm going to learn the financial metrics, yada yada yada. I had my mind was there, and that's probably a big reason why I signed up for that job. Is I thought it was going to be a great fallback if the real estate thing didn't work out, and a great education either way. And the reality is, it was a great education if I wanted to keep working for Wells Fargo. But I cannot stress enough, anybody listening in who wants to go be an entrepreneur, there is no substitution to just doing it, right? And a great, for example, is like, you want to ride a bike, go get on a bike and start pedaling. There's just
Yeah.
no substitute.
Yeah, get on a bike, not a skateboard. Hey, so in all of the deals that you've done, have you ever used creative financing? Having the owner carry the paper on a park that you're trying to buy, or do you find that it's very hard to find those deals and it's just easier to work with? I mean, you've got such a large engine now at this point that you can go and get in front of just about anybody, and the numbers will speak for themselves because you have a track record of success. Um, but do you ever use creative financing, owner financing specifically?
Absolutely. So I wouldn't say that's my bread and butter, but I would say creativity is always my bread and butter because when you're not conventional, when you're David, not Goliath, you need to find ways to get deals done. Sometimes it's all cash, sometimes it's seller carry, sometimes it's a seller carry second, sometimes it's a conventional loan, sometimes it's a bridge debt, sometimes it's a construction loan. So the one thing I pride myself on is I like to be weird. And I don't mean weird in a derogatory sense. I mean, if you want to be in the 1%, you have to offer the world something 1%. You can't be, oh, such a nice guy or really want it. You have to be 1% smart or 1% hardworking or 1% talented or 1% good looking, which I certainly am not, 1% lucky. There's 1% that I could do back when I got started, and I can continue to be to this day, I can be 1% weird. I can be 1% willing to do what the next guy is not willing to do and find a way to make that valuable. And that's exactly what I did, because what I realized is there are three legs to the stool of any real estate transaction. Your acquisition. So, in other words, somebody or some group of people need to agree to sell you and only you said property. Number one. Then, number two is that person or group of people, they're going to want some money. So, you need to be able to go and raise debt, equity, or some combination of the two. And then, number three, someone's got to actually run it. There's got to be an operator. Now, two of those three do not require money or experience, as it turns out. Everybody wants to do acquisitions, it's fun. Everybody wants to raise money, it's fun. No one wants to operate. And probably the funniest example I've heard about this is everybody wants to talk about making the baby. Then people start to disappear when it comes to raising the baby. And I love that so much because it slapped me across the face when everybody else was like, man, I got to go raise money. I got to go find deals. I was hearing over and over again disgust in people's voices when it came to operations. And instead of being like everybody else, I was weird. And I went, you guys are disgusted by operations. You don't want to do it. You roll your eyebrows. You're talking about third party management companies. I can not only go and do this, but I can get paid to do this. Oh, and by the way, didn't know this at the time, know it now. The irony is, I am a better acquisitions guy and better capital raiser, both debt and equity, because I'm an operations guy. What do investors want to know? They want to know about your business plan. What do lenders want to know? They want to know about your underwriting and potential risks. I can now talk about in detail how much more accurate my underwriting is, not because my math is better, not because my modeling is better, but because my inputs are better. Because I know how much a trash can per unit costs or should cost in southern Atlanta, Georgia, because I live it, right? I have that inch wide, mile deep, intimate knowledge. By not having any money, it forced me to be an operator, which then landed when I went to go and talk to people about off market deals. Because now all of a sudden they're asking me questions and I'm not expecting anything in return. Now, when it's time to sell, hey, that Ryan guy, boy, he really helped me out. He got me a plumber. He helped me introduce me to a banker. He answered my eviction question. And then he hung up the phone and went away. He didn't ask me for something. Boy, he'd be a great guy to sell to. And that's how it absolutely snowballed is I was
No
weird.
kidding.
I
Yeah.
was weird. I went and did the thing that was very valuable, if nothing else, because no one wanted to do it. And yeah, I loved doing it, but that's the lesson to be learned is you either need to be, if you want to do out of the gate what you want to do, the fun, sexy thing, you better be really, really stinking good at it. And if you're not really, really stinking good at something, then go do something no one else wants to do that's still very, very valuable. And again, to me, that was operations. Then it bled into everything else.
So you're saying that you're telling us that you manage all of your properties, or do you
Oh yeah,
hire
I,
third party?
I will kick the crap out of third party management companies. I would not hire one to this day because I know more than a lot of them. And even if I don't, I'm gonna care way more than they ever will because it's my money and my reputation in these deals. So to
Right.
me, heck no, I never want to hand off the keys to someone else unless it's a business partner who's equally has more than their own capital at stake.
Yeah.
It's
Equally
like that.
invested.
It's like that movie 300. If you've ever seen it, there's a part of the movie where the Spartan leader goes, he looks at the allies and he's like, "What's your profession, soldier?" And he goes, "I'm a fisherman." And he points at the other one and he goes, "What's your profession, soldier?" And he goes, "I'm a baker." And then he turns to the Spartans and he goes, "Spartans, what is your profession?" And they go, "Wah!" So what does that mean? You want the baker to part time run your mobile home park? No, you want the dude who's willing to die for you, whose identity is to run said property. And that's me. I'm not saying that the third party management company isn't a soldier and isn't they don't love it, but it's not theirs. They're mercenaries. And what happens if you study war, Sun Tzu, The Art of War? What happens when you study about mercenaries? As soon as it doesn't look lucrative or favorable, they gone.
Oh yeah,
Whereas
they take the best offer.
Battle of Thermopylae, baby. We stay in here until the last one of us is dead. And that's only going to come for yourself or people with significant skin in the game. And to me, that's the only way I'll do properties is if I get to run it or someone with a lot to lose is running it as well, if that makes sense.
Right on. That makes sense to me. Um, let's transition a little bit. Now, we've got a pretty good idea of the size of your organization, if you will, the size of your portfolio, and certainly your experience and your passion for what you do. Um, that being said, you describe yourself as being kind of a system driven guy, and you've explained that to us a little bit. Now, how is AI changing or supercharging the systems that you rely on to run your operation on a day to day basis?
So it's not, as it turns out. One thing I had to do early on pre AI was I had to teach myself things. So I couldn't hire an accountant or even a basic bookkeeper because I didn't have any money. So what did I do? I taught myself accounting. I wanted to appeal to Latino residents and contractors. And this was prior to Google Translate. So what did I do? I went and taught myself Spanish, at least enough to be able to speak out loud. I needed to do a lot of tasks that were very repetitive in nature and very tedious. So what did I do? I partnered with a lot of different software programs from Rent Manager, Zego, Paylease, Avid, Metron, and learned how to automate them so it could do a whole lot of stuff for me without having to touch anything. And so by the time Google Translate shows up, by the time Claude, ChatGPT show up, my whole system is automated, and it enhances what I do. So I'm not going to sit here and say I don't use AI because I do, and it's great. AI can do a lot of tedious, repetitive activities for me. Some of those include things like reviewing contracts or pulling market data or doing very simple underwriting, helping me write very sensitive emails, helping just me think through problems sometimes. I wouldn't say any of those things is a game changer. I would say it's a comfort. It makes my life nicer. I wouldn't say it's a total game changer. However, and here's a big reason why I was excited to come on your podcast, because if you hear my story and you go, "Wow, this Ryan guy, like, that's way cool and all, but dude, I'm not quitting my job, moving into a trailer, sleeping on a blow up mattress, eating ramen noodles, and teaching myself Spanish all day long. I can't do that. I won't do that. I got kids. I got a life. I got a this. I got a that. Excuse, 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 excuse." Well, guess what? With AI, you now don't have to. You now can build a website using Claude, just talking to it. You can now create all sorts of great automations using AI. You don't have to be weird like me. And the thing that gets me excited about this is not that I think, oh no, like I'm now going to have a bunch of competition with people who are less skilled and talented because they no, it's going to flatten learning curves, not eliminate them. You as a business owner will still need to go and get those skills and talents, and I still encourage people to go all in and chase your dreams and try to learn a foreign language and how to do all these things. But there are a lot of moments where I just dumped hours and hours into something that yielded me nothing. That in retrospect was completely and totally stupid for me to do, but I couldn't because there wasn't an automation or an AI to do it. Now, for example, building a website, there's that is stupid to me now. It does not. I can now go build a website like it's not, and I don't need a website for what I do. That's a great landing page, and so To me, the exciting part for all you listeners is you don't have to be weird and crazy and, as rah-rah as I am to start a business. AI can flatten that curve and allow you to spend your time more efficiently building those skills.
So let's try to take a look at a practical example then. You're using AI for underwriting and deal sourcing and market analysis and all that good stuff. Walk us through what a workflow actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, let's do something sexy. So let's talk about deals. So I have a dozen or so deals hit my plate every day between on market, off market. What I have in terms of my Claude and what we've built out is the ability to just quite literally upload either an OM or very basic information. So that'll include lot count, what the mix of homes are, utilities, stuff like that. Most importantly, the address. Because what Claude can now do for me is it can now go, and if it's a market I'm not in, let's say it's a new market, and this is where it's really special. Because I have my Claude programmed out to pull data from HUD.gov, Zillow, Rent.com, Apartment.com, and to basically create for me a bell curve of potential rents for today. And then the real magic is in the vision as to where the rent is going tomorrow. But a big thing is what is true rent today? Because in the mobile home park space, turnover is incredibly low. So trying to guess at what true market lot rent is today is incredibly difficult because most of the time when somebody moves out of a mobile home park and they own their home, they sell it to somebody else who's taking over their lot rent. It's very rare that someone will sell you back the home and then you have a chance to set lot rent at whatever's fair market. So your mark to market opportunities are very few and far between. So for Claude to go out and pull together all of this information for me, and not only do that, but also take a stab at very basic underwriting. And I want to be very clear about this. AI is not to the point where I have full and total trust in it to actually go out and do a proper underwrite. It's just not, it just does not have the intimate market knowledge and industry knowledge that I have. It's not going to replace that, at least today, maybe tomorrow. But what this can do for me in 5 minutes or less is it can tell me, kind of give me a rough range of where I might come in terms of where I might offer. So, in other words, if you can imagine a shotgun, this is a shotgun aimed at the broadside of a barn. If it passes the shotgun test or the sniff test or whatever, 5 minute valuation test, now all of a sudden it gets flagged and now it's got my attention. And from there, I jump up from a shotgun to a rifle. Now all of a sudden I'm going to be a little bit more precise. It's going to get a little bit more of my time. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And just to make sure it passes the like, hey, this is worth my time. If the answer to that is yes, then I whip out the sniper rifle and now I'm aiming a mile downfield. Right now, all of a sudden, I'm spending 4 hours underwriting something because at that point in time, now I got a really great lead and I really need to make sure my offer is strong, competitive, and this is something I really want. But the beautiful thing about Claude is like, I gotta say, probably 11 out of 12 of those that hit my desk daily don't even pass the shotgun test. And for
Right. So you don't
my
waste any time.
Exactly. And that is the real fascinating part about the acquisition piece of what I think AI can do is I mean we're not talking this is saving me 12 hours a day. This is probably saving me about an hour. It's probably costing me too because I am now not looking at those deals at all. And I'm not to say like maybe I'm missing an opportunity here and there. I sure I am, but I'm not. I'm not gonna be sipping on my coffee at 7 a.m. looking at the deals, going, man, there's a lot for sale in Southern Iowa right now. What's going on over there? That's gone. So it's a double-edged sword, AI, because while you're automating away some of those things, there's some little bitsy, moments of insight that you're going to miss as a result. However, there's also an opportunity cost to that, because there's also other moments of little itsy bitsy insights that I'm now getting because the AI is handling lower value activities for me. So there's pros and cons to everything, but that's one great example of how you spend a day on your Claude modeling it out, getting everything ready to go, and now you can use it indefinitely.
Right. Okay. Awesome. What about if we switch to the resident and the community management side of your business? Um, things like communication, maintenance tracking, rent collection, those kinds of things. How are you using AI with those ideas in mind?
I am not, and I want to caution everybody listening in. I do not believe is fully ironclad to protect your slash residence secured information. I could not recommend you enough to not let AI touch things like social security numbers, birth dates, names, phone numbers, addresses. Don't do it. It's not worth it. The reality is, I've spent enough of my time building out my softwares that are secure, by the way. It's about as secure as you can reasonably hope. Most of my automations are built through various software platforms that don't touch AI. Where I integrate AI into my property management wing, if you will, is more along the lines of, again, any tedious activity, any research, any contracts that I just kind of want a second opinion on. So I'll give you a great quick example. Rather than spending $150 an hour to send to a contract to my attorney and who outsources it to his or her paralegal, I can upload it to an AI and it can flag for me some really key things.
Right.
So I'm not going
Right.
to trust AI as an attorney. Trust me, I can tell you horror stories about that. But for lower level kind of paralegal type activities that I need a quick answer to, AI can be fantastic. AI can also, again, do perform fantastic Google searches. So, for example, if there's a lawsuit, you can use AI to Google search and database search for you to find similar lawsuits and then help you gather and prep some things you can go into a conversation with one of your attorneys about. It can help you with tenant communication in the regards that, like, if there's a really heated exchange, or you need to be really careful with what you say, or you want kind of a second opinion, AI can be fantastic for that. I have a business partner of mine who has launched an AI phone answering service, and I can't tell you how much of an expensive disaster that has been. AI maybe one day will get to the point where it can really have a great conversation with a prospect or a tenant. But right now, and actually now come to think of it, more than one of folks I know, I've had disaster stories to say about AI companies in terms of tenants calling in and prospects calling in. I talk to my tenants. I go to my properties. I knock on doors. I walk communities, and I was just there, and the thing that stuck out to me that I heard over and over is like, dude, I'll call in, and I know I'm talking to a robot, and I don't know if the message ever gets to you guys. And that was, I need to preface it. That was my friend, my friend's community, and I was there auditing, and it just like, man, when I heard that, I had to call out my buddy and be like, dude, like, please don't do this. There's a reason why I was excited that you did this first. And if this was going to go well, I would roll it out. But it's just like, man, there is, maybe one day AI is going to get there. But right now, people want to talk to people. And that's one thing we start. It's part of our SOPs now, by the way. We start phone calls by saying, you are talking to a human. And it is such a breath of relief for residents under my active management. So look,
Right.
AI, it'll get there, but in terms of property management, man, I would be really careful for all you listeners. But in terms of acquisitions, it can really save you a lot of time.
So that being said, if you had a magic wand and there was one thing that you wish AI would solve for you in your business, what would that be?
Without a doubt, thinking twice is water recapture. So, one big problem that we have in our asset class is that municipalities, water companies, utilities, they tend to want to bill the property and not the individual homeowners. And that causes problems for us because there's, even if you have brand new infrastructure, there is always a leaky elbow or a pin sized leak somewhere along the line, and you have quite literally leakage. And so, traditionally speaking, the goal is to hit an 80% recapture rate. What does that mean? If I'm charged a dollar, I legally bill back 80 cents to all the residents, right? So you have a water meter at everybody's house, they pay for what they use, and you don't make a profit. The problem is, again, between the master meter and those individual homes, about best case scenario, realistically, 20% of that bill that you get charged, it just goes straight into the ground. Now, what does that look like when you're at a big scale like mine? We lost over $200,000 in 2025 in water to the ground. And maybe it wasn't to the ground. Maybe one of the meters isn't working quite right, or there's a leak
Wow.
right before the meter, or this, that, or the other thing. But let me just put this in perspective. If you lose $200,000 at a 10 cap, which is not appropriate, that's way too high. At a 10 cap, that's $2 million worth of property value in terms of NOI. That's just that just is leaking into the ground. And if it trades at a 5 cap, that's a multiple of that. So in other words, you're talking millions and millions of dollars of property values just going right into the ground. If AI could help me, even just give me more accurate and up to date information as to the gallons that I'm getting billed and the gallons that I am charging my residents, because it's easy to automate what I'm paying versus what I'm receiving from residents. That's easy. It's that each municipality calculates gallon usage differently. They bill at different times of the month and at different cadences. Sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's every other month, sometimes it's once a quarter, sometimes it's once a week. It's all a giant hot mess. And even then, I have to wait for paper statements oftentimes. Oh, and it's in the different locations, and it's hard to read, and da. If I could have an AI system to help me recapture, that would be worth its weight in gold. I have no idea how you're building that, though, but by golly, that would be a game changer.
Okay, that's good. That's some serious concrete information right there. And that's a good one. I've never heard of anything like that. Um, it kind of excites me to maybe dive into this a little bit and see if I can figure out a solution for you. Um, but yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so you do some consulting and some mentoring, is that right?
I do.
Tell us a little bit about what you're offering.
Look, it's free. I had nothing when I got started, and a very minute sliver of the population, handful of folks, helped me when I got started. And there's no way I can realistically pay those individuals back outside of paying it forward. And so 99% of what I do is absolutely free. I got two podcasts. I have a whole training course. I have multiple communities, including Facebook and school. It's all free. And it will always be free because I want to usher in the next generation of real estate entrepreneurs, specifically mobile home parks, but just entrepreneurs in general, because I want to make the world a better place because I was in it. Now, do I charge at some point? Of course. Why? Some people really need hours and hours and hours and hours of my time. And if I'm going to give you hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of my time, you better show up, have done your homework, and you have a clear purpose with which you want to get of items that you want to get out of my time. And the best way to do that is to make it hurt, to make you write a check that motivates you to do your homework, show up and take it seriously. Because as much as I love hopping on the phone with folks for free, boy, do they ever show up late or flake or ghost or just,
Right,
sit back
right,
and not do what I tell them to do. At which point in
right.
time, I'm basically an entertainer. Because if I give you advice and it makes you feel good in the moment, then you don't do anything with it, all I have done is entertain you. I am not an entertainer. So while, yes, a giant portion of what I do is absolutely free, will always be free. And yes, the only time I'm going to ask anybody for money is if you need hours and hours and hours of my time. The reality is, if you really, really need something from me, I'm going to expect you to show up and to kick butt. So look, I ain't hard to find on purpose, y'all. My last name is Narus. It's spelled Narus. I want you to. I'm here so you can find me, so I can help you for free, and I don't need anything in return. If you Google me, I am the first thing that shows up. My LinkedIn is there. Connect with me. My website is there. Email me through it. Even if you have questions about business that have nothing to do with real estate, I own non-real estate businesses too. And there is nothing I love more than helping others. And again, I don't expect anything in return. So, man, it's been an honor to be here. I thank you again. I thank you for reaching out to me and being impressed with what I've done and having me on your podcast. It means a lot. And I really hope I've helped inspire folks to bet on themselves.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ryan. I've had quite a few conversations over the last couple of months as I've been rolling out this idea of this behind the business podcast. And I've talked with guys and gals from all walks of the street when it comes to real estate. And you were the first person that I've talked to um, in the mobile home space. And you're also the very first person to offer your help. You know what? Offer your help for free and your mentorship. And that's special. And it tells me a little bit about who you really are. Besides one hell of a business guy, obviously. So, thank you. And this has been an awesome time for me to get to know you and to get to know about your business. And you've been more than generous today, and I want to thank you very much. All right, everybody, thank you for being here, and thanks for listening in, and we will see you on the next one.